Hi, my name's Mike Jones, and I'd like to talk to you about a couple of boats, a story of two boats. One was a project boat, and the other was a boat that I purchased later on that wasn't supposed to be a project, so I thought I'd just compare the two. Back in 2017, I bought an Express 30. I bought this as a project boat, knowing it was a big project. At the time, I was considering retiring from my flight instructing position, and I was looking for a project just to keep me busy. Back in the 1980s, I'd actually crewed on several Express 30s, and this was on Lake Huron, and I raced on Express 30M and the Bayview Mackinac race, and I had a bit of experience with Express 30s. So this Express 30 that I found kind of interesting. My brother and I took a close look at the boat before I bought it. And he had actually worked at Express and at Goman Yachts back in the 1980s when this particular boat was built. And he was quite familiar with them, and in particular, this boat, he was familiar with it. This boat was built in 1984, was actually used for, I think, as a showboat at the Toronto Boat Show for a couple of years. The boat originally came with a fancy custom interior created by Kettle Creek Canvas Company in Port Stanley. And when I picked up the boat, both the interior was missing and the Kettle Canvas Creek Company is now gone too. The boat had been languishing for over 14 years in a farmer's field near Grand Bend, and it turned out to be a much bigger project than I imagined. Anything that was not screwed down had been removed, and anything, their fittings that were gone, their instruments were all gone, anything not bolted down had gone missing. So here's a little list of some of the things that were missing. When I first looked at the boat, there were no sails, no sheets, no boom, no spinnaker pole. Boom vang was gone. There was no roller furling. There was no anchor or anchor rode. Fenders and mooring lines were all gone. There were no electronics. The instruments, compass, binnacle, and wheel, they were all gone. The interior had been gutted. There were no cushions, no upholstery. The drawers even had all disappeared. And even the steps down into the companionway steps down into the cabin were gone. The hull sounded good when we looked at it. We did find a few soft spots in the deck though. The boat had been completely open to the elements when we found it. The companionway cover had rotted and fallen into the boat, and at some point the boat looked like it had filled up with water, probably rainwater and melted snow, and in the bilge. And at some point someone had come along and drilled about a 2-inch hole in the bottom of the boat just to let the water out, and that's probably saved the boat from oblivion. So what's involved in trying to resurrect a boat that's spent 14 years in a farmer's field? As I said before, it's been open and unprotected from the weather, and it's been cannibalized, and everything that was removable had disappeared. But we found that there's still some good things in the boat. The engine still looked like it was good. There had been standing water left inside the boat, and many of the bulkheads had rotted away at the base and had to be replaced. The cabin sole, or the floor of the boat, was gone. The halyards had all been sitting on the mast outside for 14 years, so they needed to be replaced. There's no anchor rode, no sails at all, no furler. There are lots of spots. There are a few spots in the deck that were going to need work, but we thought that that could be put off a little bit. The cabin windows or port lights, they were all leaking and had cracked and had to be replaced. The forward hatch frame was cracked and needed to be replaced. It was leaking. So when we looked and I started working on the boat, and each job, like typical boat jobs, you think it's going to take a weekend and it takes 3 weeks. You look at a problem and all you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg, and that provided lots of challenges throughout the process of bringing the boat back. Once I had the boat transported to LaSalle, my first job was just trying to stop the leaks in the cabin. Actually, the first job was, the first big challenge was just to get the boat out of Grand Bend. You know, sitting in a farmer's field, the cradle had sunk into the ground almost a foot, so we had to dig out all around it just so we could lift the boat up onto a trailer to move it. But getting back to the cabin leaks, this actually ended up taking years to try and solve the problem there. I started with the most obvious problems. You know, I replaced all the cabin windows, and then I replaced the hatch, thinking that would solve most of the problems. I got a little bit of the problem, and I also found out that the cabin windows were not the same size from port to starboard. So the boat still leaked after replacing that. I removed the deck cowling. It's sort of a big piece of fiberglass on the top of the cabin that covers up all the halyards as they come back from the mast. And it was just screwed onto the top of the cabin, so there's water leaking through those screw holes into the core. So I replaced all those with bolts and had epoxied special nuts that would not leak, and that helped a little bit. I think it was leaking around the mast ring, so I recocked that, and that didn't help much. So I ended up actually having to take the mast ring right out and replace the deck and the core around the mast for about 2 or 3 feet in front and behind the mast and all around it. And that started to get some of the major problems. There had been marine plywood between that was used as core there, and it was completely soaked. Now, after that, I probably reduced 90% of the leaking in the cabin, but I guess just about any boat is going to leak somewhere, so I still had to live with it a bit. In a project like this, you can imagine that there are lots of things to purchase and buy to get the boat back. So a lot of stuff I had to buy new, considering sails and sheets and halyards and all that sort of thing. And but trying to save a little bit of money, I also bought a lot of used stuff, and I got some real deals, and I got some things that turned out not to be great deals. But since there's no boom for the boat, my first attempt was to buy a used boom off of Beneteau, and I used it for one season and really decided that it wasn't really the boat or the boom for the boat. Same thing with a boom vang. I picked up a really nice boom vang. Didn't really work out. It's still sitting in my garage if anybody wants I think it's a Garhar boom vang. I did pick up some good deals. Spinnaker pole, perfect spinnaker pole. I picked it up in Midland. The main sheet picked up off Kijiji in Toronto. Cabin stairs, picked them up locally in LaSalle. They're actually off, I think, CNC 27 with a little bit of cutting and customization. I was able to make them fit an Express 30. So after owning the Express 30 and having a lot of fun rebuilding it and bringing it back to life, I sort of realized that it was a nice boat and a great sailor, but I was looking to cruise a little bit. I'd love to go back up to the North Channel, Georgian Bay, maybe even go down south sometime. So I was looking for something a little bit bigger, and that's how I ended up looking at a Goman Express 35. It's a big brother of the 30. The boat I was looking at was in Bayfield, and the family who originally bought the boat in 1985, they were looking at selling it. So ended up buying that, and it was ready to cruise. So what's involved in buying an Express 35 that's supposed to be ready to sail? Well, I had a fairly up-to-date survey that looked really good. The boat was supposed to be complete and ready to cruise, and in most ways it was. They'd also had a lot of extensive work done to the boat in the last few years. They'd retrofitted a short draft keel, which was designed by Steve Killing, I understand, and it brought the draft from 6.5 feet up to 5.5 feet, which is a little easier for cruising. But a lot of the equipment that was on the boat is quite dated. So, I think the radio goes back to 1985, and The furler has been problematic and not really reliable. I've had all kinds of problems with the furler getting jammed. And last time I went sailing, a piece of the furler fell off and ended up in the middle of Lake Huron. So little things like that. The electrical system, I completely revamped the electrical system on the Express 30. The 35, it's kind of usable, but you take a close look at it, and there's 35 years of owner modifications, so that's going to be a project. For some reason, my starter battery, I replaced it, but there's something that's draining it, and every week, if it's not plugged in or charged, it just drains down to nothing. There's no GPS or chart plotter on the boat. The hydraulic backstay adjuster was seized and inoperative, but I was lucky enough to find a shop near Woodstock, not too far away, that was able to remanufacture it or put it back together, and it's now working great. Just like the Express 30, Yanmar 3GM engine works great, but the engine instruments and the tachometer don't work. So what are the pros and cons of buying a project boat versus a boat that's ready to sail? So let's say the pros of a project boat. You learn all the systems and all the hidden corners in the boat when you're working on it. I felt that I could trust the boat after I'd done all the work on it, because I knew that how the work had been done. If I didn't do it, I was there when someone was working on the boat, so I could trust it. Working on the boat actually can be a lot of fun when things go well. You can customize the boat, you can make it your own boat, you can do things the way that you want to. And it's actually kind of satisfying to save a boat and bring it back to life that it was very close to being scrapped, and it was nice to see it sail again. So what are some of the cons of a project boat? Well, working on a boat can be quite discouraging too when things don't go well. So these projects, some of them I described, they're like icebergs. You start and then you don't realize how big they are. You just keep digging and digging and find more and more problems. So that can be a little discouraging. Also, you're stuck working on a boat when you could be out sailing. So if you like sailing, and I like sailing, I enjoy sailing, it's kind of hard on a beautiful day to see everybody heading out and you're stuck on your boat working on it. And it's also, you think that you're going to save money by buying a cheap boat, but it's really easy to spend a lot of money. And it's really easy to let that get out of hand. So I tried to buy a lot of used stuff, but there are a lot of things I had to buy new. And probably I could have bought an Express 30 a lot cheaper and got out sailing a lot quicker. So there are pros and cons to a ready-to-sail or cruise boat also. So when I bought the 35, it was ready to launch and sail and cruise. That's a pro. That's all the systems are there and they should be working. What are some of the cons of a ready-to-sail cruise boat? Well, I think no matter how good people say the boat is or how the survey looks, there are going to be projects on it. So there are lots of hidden surprises on a boat that's ready to sail too. I think you could buy a new boat and still have projects and be working on the boat. It does cost a lot more, and things will break on an old boat too. I'm having to replace things, and it's costing more than I expected. But I guess boats, that's a description of a boat, is a hole in the water they pour money into. And one con of a sailing and cruising boat is that you're probably out sailing when maybe you should be working on a project on the boat too. So, there are pros and cons of project boats, there are pros and cons of ready-to-sail boat. I think it all depends on your situation. I think both these boats were right for me at the time. I enjoyed the project, but I've also found that I'm enjoying the Express 35 and being able to get out and sail and cruise.